First of all, it's a huge honor to have this talk together because your works represent an high level, a prestigious contribution to our studies on the theory of law, Judaism, theology, Jewish laws and traditions, secular historiography, and sincerely, much, much more. You made even my own career at one of the most distinguished points to date by publishing my essay about Cohen and the conception of religious freedom during the Weimar Republic. And I'm speaking both as a professor and as a researcher. So I'm glad and honored to be here, even if these overwhelming days too are making a dent in everyday life for all countries, Italy and Russia. Let me dedicate a prayer, Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Jew, atheist, and whatever, to whom is still ill and to whom is standing still. God bless them. Now, we are going to start a discussion on Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I can reassure you, you will maybe not listen to a single word about crime and punishment, the idiot, demons, and the brothers Karamazov. Okay, I'm not serious at all. I could be a good lawyer, but I will never be a good liar, as far as I'm concerned, or I hope to. Anyway, I still think, and I still feel, that other novellas might show clearly the peculiar approach to legal sciences and juridical interpretations if we admit that law is not only judgment, the final trial. The law is, to me, a strenuous attempt to get out the blue into the black. If you know the Canadian poet and guitarist Neil Young, we have to take grace from the conflict. And I think it's the ultimate message in Dostoevsky's works. I will prefer to concentrate on the influence, the structures, and the heritage of Poor Folk, 1844, Humiliated and Insulted, 1861, and Notes from Underground, 1864. Funnily enough, I'm trying to demonstrate the link between obscurity and justice in his works. The shape of justice in the sense of a process, not characteristically institutional, but typically individual. My static being in my condition, my knowledge of my condition, a reflection on the weight and the strength of my distress and disease, a reaction paradoxically consisting in an action of mine, with her own and proper consequences, negative or somehow and sometimes liberating. My feelings about it and the shame or the price of my society and community. Finally, my regret. On the other hand, anyway, this series of books is even an acclaimed photograph of a talented writer and a growing on man facing the reality of his time and the truth in his mind. We have in my tracking shot an excellent debut, Poor Folk, and a couple taken from the maturity. That means to find out a narrative thread, also in changes, because as Charles Taylor and Michael Sandel usually say, the evolution is not possible without a context, a culture, and a living soul. The 19th century seemed in Western Europe a triumph of government and industry, a positive lecture able to compress the born of metropolis, the first wave of a middle-class customary trend in politics, fashion, behavior. I will prefer to concentrate on the influence, By now we can notice that many authors and scholars kept the attention on the poorest, almost a silent majority everywhere. It's not a tribute to liberalism and the liberal idea of civil contractual liberty. If Émile Zola and Guy de Maupassant have spoken so much about French lumpenproletariat and the rural survival of peripheral countrysides, demographic and social conditions were different in Russia, but poor people is a perfect insertion between Gogol and the heart-touching naturalist examination of low-key employed, moderately autonomous prostitutes, bedridden and betrayed people, forgotten by the social statehood and not forgiven by the increasing vitalist zeitgeist of the time. A nameless leading figure of poor folk absolutely is the crumbling flats of Varvara Dobroslavova and Alexeyevich Devushkin. Their condition of vague parental and ambiguous sentimental relationship is still not just a mere neighborhood, but it will never get the level of an aware empathy between them. I may see and I may say that the philosopher Vissarion Belinsky, reviewing poor folk for the first time, recognized in it what we can now call a fruitful contradiction, a widely spontaneous adhesion to the difficult defiance in misery, but a prominent attention to the ontological irreparability of existence. Human condition is not a strike opposing socialism and liberalism. That synthesis sounds good only for politics. If we take a look in the experience of political representation and mass participation between the second half of the 19th century and the first one of the 20th. I'm backing the methodological lesson of jurists and sociologists in the line of Hans Kelsen, Max Weber, and David Held. Liberalism appeared like the ultimate victory against the Restoration. But contradictorily, we cannot think about liberalism without the pacified and conservative Europe of 1815 Restoration. That individual freedom was furthermore the civil and material bliss for the ones already inducted into the legal mantra of the time: property, ownerships, credits, business deals, in a certain way, even education and spare time. Does any one of us have good news for the miserables violently beating during the 1832 June rebellion in Paris? Yep, Dostoevsky was writing for himself, for them, for us, in every kind of future that the human vicissitudes were inexorably building in and out our conscience. Humiliated and insulted was critically a washout, and I am battling hard to understand exactly why. The most correct reason probably is that if I have a pimple on my face, I'll try to get a mirror quite hiding this damned pimple. And maybe for the inner and ethical analysis of the Russian context, humiliated and insulted was not a pimple, but probably a plague, seen not in a mirror, but on binoculars. Well, it was violently the truth of his time. I think that this novel has the attitude to prove Stefan Zweig for right, and good for me, isn't it? My view about the revealing conception of law and justice in Dostoevsky's thoughts. There is a specific in this book, a specific point where and when finally the two main rivulets of the novella meet each other. We discover, and that's the grandiosity of Dostoevsky's psychological narrative. We have been latently suspecting it, page by page, that the fragile but seductive Elena, familiarly Nellie, is the natural daughter of the ambitious landowner Balkovsky. What a shame. The girl generously housed by Vanya Petrovich, a sort of Dostoevsky emblem. I agree with the traditional critique about it, is the daughter of the original employer of the sadly declining or declined to Ikhmanev family. This breeding bind starts with a marvelous but not unique stylistic device, typical in feuilleton narrative in Europe that time. The old man Smith with his dog Azorka, his dying dog Azorka. Smith was a failed industrialist. Let's underline an undervalued thing, an industrialist, not a wheeler dealer, a rich man, not a liar. There is no lost and simultaneously no grace, no ransom for wheeler dealers in Dostoevsky. By encountering him, the suffering, progressively illuminating narration of Vanya opens the doors. Let's pretend that no one in this virtual room has the will to meet his old man Smith and Azorka the dog while drinking a beer or a coffee at his favorite bar. It is substantially known that Notes from the Underground, 1864, just 3 years after this critical vanishing point, contains the most undoubtedly precise elements to define a complete theory on the relation between law and economics, public law and sociology, politics and administrative justice, personal biography and relevant civil factors of reconstructing a theme, a framework, a paradigm of the public easement to the kingdom, to the state, and the Tsarism. If we are learned enough to use the categories of comparative public law, we should emphasize that the concrete dynamics and effective obligation of power are deeply linked to the modulus concretely enrolled in a contingent normative separation of jurisdictions, elective assemblies, executive agencies, but we are adequately reflective to clarify that the intrinsic binding of the decision and their own pretension of obedience is more universal than parceled, all-encompassing than politically determined. The great surprise, in my opinion anyway, just in my opinion, in Notes from Underground, is to read 12 most specular parts in the same books. You can prefer the first part, the immaculate and pure rage of the young age, that could easily seem a masterpiece of an unripe and green form of social critique, and a narrative somehow indulgent, the second part, sequence of precise adult episodes concerning bureaucracy, statesmanship, corruption, life, even cruelty, or at least motivated skepticism. Please, alert. We can enlarge our focus on the book by reducing Dostoevsky's one. It's strange that the age of the sour polemicists of the first part is the same age of the messianic author of Poor Folk, almost 24, isn't it? It's surprising that the age of the disenchanted storyteller of adult memories is the same of the author of exactly Notes from Underground, 40 years old or almost the same, isn't it? And maybe in getting so intimate, I just can feel it. But the axis of justice in the getting older Dostoevsky just reminds me of the battle of everyone and every more. So that sense of truth that should be given and somehow captured by a human condition taken in a somehow advertising and subversing order is really, really, really an actual thing of our time. And it does not concern politics in the sense of precise and specific political parties. And maybe it's not about even two elements fundamental for Dostoevsky. The race, no, is Slavic thought, is emphasized on the Slavic thought and tradition, and even religion, because human condition is something that constantly risks to be kidnapped by the anxiety and the injustice of a human power. So we have metaphysics, we have to come free in the reality by searching for something that is still not reality. And at the very, very basic terms is my opinion for this spoken talk, but I promise my paper will be more rich, especially by the bibliography and the footnotes, but I'm quite happy to have summarized at least the main points to me. So special thanks for his kind acceptance and invitation to Professor and friend Igor Kaufman, every one of you connected, and let me add just a personal grateful passage that be sure it won't be on the final article, to my girlfriend who really reads a lot, and as Dostoevsky made a character of his say, she really reads a lot. She really reads a lot inside of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Domenica, for your insightful and challenging paper with a challenging and again insightful reading of one of Dostoevsky's a classical text, and some questions, commentaries.
Yeah, I would like to. May I?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Can you hear me? I'll do it in English to make sure it's easier to avoid the issues of translation. Well, first of all, thank you very much, and I appreciate the navigation of the difficulty of the virtual room. That's very clear. I would like you to please help me reconcile, or maybe to comment on a position you took in the beginning about the obscurity of injustice, rather than justice being simply a judgment or rendering a judgment on the one hand, and your own admission by the end that she really reads a lot inside of me. So how do you, as a thinker, navigate this probably necessity of another person? I don't know how you want to navigate it, but the obscurity of justice and the reading inside of you. How do you think about yourself as a researcher, as a thinker, vis-a-vis these two statements, which seem to be really two sides of the same coin, but I could be completely misreading you, and I would like to understand it better.
First of all, thank you for your question. It's very intimate, and it lets me show an inner point of view, and which is not necessarily a mistake for a researcher. If you are clean and honest enough to divide your own personal point of view and the response of the legal or literary or whatever source of your study. So many special thanks for your questions. I think that the sense of obscurity is a constant force in Dostoevsky production, which is quite strange because we have a lot of different themes in Dostoevsky opera, and we have a lot of different characters. We have poor folk that probably at the beginning of his works, he doesn't directly know, because his social heritage was not exactly that one. I think that obscurity, and I hope to be able in the future to read Dostoevsky in his own language, will seriously help me to clarify this point. But I think that if we divide the semantic part of the darkness and the semantic part of the light, the dark one is about the desperation and the negative aftermath of the human behaviors about justice. Let's just think about Vanya. Let's just think about the office man of Notes from Underground. So human law can be easily disguided by a cause to justify human injustice. But Dostoevsky, since his very first beginning, let me know that there is something more. Law cannot be limited to the human production of norms. We have to look, the human production of norms is not the entire part of law. And maybe if we add to our analysis the brothers Karamazov is perfectly understandable what is the part of the light? In my dedication to my girlfriend, maybe you think that the part of life, or light and life, sorry, in our everyday experience is love. But I don't think that Dostoevsky especially refers to the love between a man and a woman. He gives me the idea of a constant research that is not just a positive religion in the Hegelian sense of positive religion. It's a seek for spirituality. I underlined that a dealer wheeler for Dostoevsky has no grace and no safety, because it's a sort of misunderstood thief. I do business affair by lying to you. He can make survive just the declined industrials. They were land properties. They were important men controlling the world, but maybe they failed because they were human. An impostor, a liar, a illegal merchant is someone who is attacking us in the most material of the not material sense. Is hiding to us the real truth of his soul. And that's the greatness of Dostoevsky for me.
Thank you for your. Sergei, would you like to comment more?
I just wanted to express my gratitude and very pleasant surprise of having seen this this connection laid out between the norms as which are humanly produced on the one hand, and the obscurity, which, as I understood it, if I understood Domenico correctly, is coming not from the humans, but from that which, I don't know what's the place of it, maybe the divine, I don't know, but the tension between the obscure and clear would also be very useful for me to keep in mind as I will be developing my own presentation. But at this point, I'm just thankful for such a sincere and thought-provoking self-analysis. Thank you, Domenico.
Thank you to you, Sergei.
Okay.
And may I add one thing, if you are okay about it. And in my career, I studied Roman Catholic canon law and ecclesiastical law, that usually in the civil law experience of Latin Europe is the law contracted between the state and the different religions. And in my experience, the force of Dostoevsky is even the role and the rule, if we can joke about the similar pronunciation of the terms, of the interpretation of law. You mentioned this sort of opposition between obscurity and light in the law, which is the main issue in my reading of Dostoevsky. And I think this issue is not just a theoretical problem if where is the light and where is the dark? The light is God, if we believe, or is the dollar, if we are Donald Trump, or I don't know. And the dark, what is the dark? The mystery or the injustice, etc., etc. I think that this opposition truly has a typical concrete consequence that properly is the activity of a judge. You are interpreting against someone something you have not written, but something even you, the strongest, the institutionally more correct in interpreting it, are subjected to, which is mega. Maybe the most different role, the most difficult role in our society, and that's the learning I got from Dostoevsky, is not to act, is not to do a revolution, is not to do a crime, is to judge something committed by someone else.